Hi, this is the Architects Want More video series. My name's Davin Hoyt, and I am your I don't know what I am. So, today's video is about projects that I've landed, jobs that I've landed, because I'm trying to expose architects to other architects or designers to people who have gotten work. Because getting your first job or your first few jobs is probably going to be the hardest ones to land. So, jobs that I've landed, basically I was doing some garden design because I was into permaculture, and then I got in with a restaurant or several restaurants, and I did logo design, and then after logo design it morphed into sign design, and then signs into actual architecture for the same clients that I did sign. So one client of mine was a pizzeria here in my hometown, and they were pretty like cash flow, I guess, type people, to where as it came in, they dillied it out. So that was a fun experience working for them. And so we did an expansion to the existing pizzeria into the next little portion of a building next door. And then I also helped that same pizzeria establish a location in the next town in an old historic building, similar to what they were used to here in our town. And then we also went to the next block and set up a to-go thing that still hasn't opened yet, but it's just because of the expense that goes into building out a restaurant and the way that they operate. They sort of superintend the project. There's multiple contractors involved with these folks. But on the next block, they went into a building that was built in the 50s, so it's not really historic. However, in this town, it's labeled as a low priority historic structure, and it's still there in the downtown area. So we had this extra historical architecture review commission or committee that overlooks your projects. I didn't know if that was just on the screen or in my nose. So because it was a low priority structure, then historically we were able to do some things to that structure. We were able to alter it much more than if we were to be in a medium priority or high priority structure. Whenever they're labeled like low, medium, high, what happened was, and this is what might happen to you if your city is trying to survive right now instead of just dying. Our city hires third-party consultants in order to do all sorts of studies. That way the study's done, it's done to a certain, everything's in a table format, and the city can sit there and point that somebody else did this, we didn't do it, but we're adopting it. Sort of like the Unified Development Code. Your city has adopted it, and now they point to it and say that you have to you have to fall in line. Let's see. I've in the early days, I did a residential remodel where somebody had what they call an old ranch house, where there's like 8-foot ceilings all throughout it, and there's brick wrapped around the whole thing, and the pitch roof is something like a 4, and it had gables, and it was kind of out in the country, hidden behind some it was in an oak tree grove. We've got oak trees around here, live oaks. And so this one woman, she was a realtor, and she liked to open up things, to vault ceilings, and she also liked screened in porches. This thing, they wanted to live there until, they're still living there. They want to live there until they get old. They want to grow old in the house. So we had a little bit of handicapped accessibility sort of stuff to plan for in the future. But not much. And to tell you the truth, I didn't like some of the design that I did in that one, but it fit what it is that they wanted to do. They needed a certain amount of square foot space and the existing roof and stuff was being vaulted, and then there were low ceilings in a few places. And before they talked to me, they had talked to an architect in Austin, Texas, who refused to work with them because I guess their ideas of reusing the house. In the beginning of the project, I told them that you might as well just clear everything down to the slab. At the end of the project, they commented, they didn't remember me saying this, but they commented, we should have taken everything down to the slab. The reason why is because we dealt with so much the old stuff that was in there, and there was no reason for us to. So my very first design for the place, it was basically, I don't know what to do here. I need to return, I need to get this stuff off my desk and see what they say about these ideas. So I put all the ideas together, and I had roof lines going all over the place, and they said, wow, this guy's got a lot of passion. He knows how to put this stuff together. It's just that we need to tone it down and direct it. And that was the whole point. Back then I was using AutoCAD to do my 2D drafting, and then I was giving 3D examples through SketchUp, and I have since gone all in on SketchUp, scrapped AutoCAD. I don't deal with AutoCAD at all. And typically I don't deal with any vector files that come my way or that are dealt with. Instead, I create the 2D section through a SketchUp model, and I export that section as a 2D vector out, so like a DXF, over to, like, say, engineers that need to examine what it is that we're talking about. And then the engineers just do their thing, create their drawings for, like, maybe my foundation plan or site plan. So I did this residence remodel, and it was very vaulty and airy. In an expansion portion of the house, we just had a shed roof. The underside, we had some awesome wood. I believe there's a concrete fireplace that was redone. The fireplace was kept in the same exact spot. The kids' rooms were kept in the same exact spot. It's just that the master bedroom sort of shared itself with what became the kids' room, the guest room, and then a hallway that led to the actual expansion of the new living, or the new master bedroom suite area. So we kind of expanded on all sides. Definitely expanded on mostly all sides. And they favored a mudroom entrance. So they wanted to park back there near the master bedroom and walk in the back door and have access to a half bath and the laundry room and a walk-through to the master bedroom closet. Or it wasn't a walk-through, I don't think, in the end. Instead, it was just a drop. I forget, but they're right there in the same vicinity. So other things, I've done residential remodels here near the downtown. That was a really deep one. That looks like a Shelby Mustang or something. It actually looks really nice. I've done residential remodels for people who are flipping houses, people who are buying that same type of house and living in it with their family for a small time period. You know, like a quaint type of remodel from something that was built in the 70s. I've done historic houses that also have to be done through the downtown historic architecture review commission, whatever it is. So in those instances, they want to, it's really strict, Unified Development Code, really strict on your square footage of your site and the amount that you want to take up. So it's like you can only expand to 45% of the square footage of your lot with impervious cover. Pervious versus impervious, you must know. That's a heavily used term. You'll be doing the calculations yourself. Engineers will do it whenever it is that they're doing a site plan. But whenever you expand one of these old historic houses, your expansion is supposed to hold signs that it's an expansion. So it needs to be just a little bit different. Materials that match but are newer. Roof pitches that are the same but newer, maybe. Newer materials. Everything's up for conversation, negotiation, except whenever it disagrees with Unified Development Code. I've got my window down and I'm in front of my house and there's a weird echo that's happening, so I don't want my voice to travel too far. I did a, okay, so there's this restaurant here in town that went into an old dealership, an old uh, an old car dealership, a Ford dealership. And in the back there, they had where the mechanics used to be, a huge, gosh, I don't even know how long it is, like 130 feet or 150 feet worth long of a metal building. And so this is the steel columns that go up, and then they attach up here diagonally, and then they go up and they meet in the middle, and then they go down and they mirror that same on the other side. So those things are massive. We're not changing those whatsoever. I've had 3 projects inside of this this warehouse that's on the backside of a restaurant now. So the restaurant basically owns the property, and they're developing it out to be a campus. And so they're starting with this warehouse that they used for other things, but now have changed into, why don't we divide it up and lease them out? Well, whenever they divide it up and lease it out, you've got to create bathrooms for these new occupants. And so one of them, actually, we created a bistro inside of a bookstore, and then on the other side of the shared bathrooms, we were gonna have some automobiles displayed for disabled veterans, I believe. However, those people didn't come through. So then the it went back to the public realm, and then 2 more clients popped up, and one of them's going to be a merchant with pet food, and then another is going to be a glass blower. So the guy from the next town who's been doing awesome glass blowing is going to bring his organization over here to this town. And so whenever you have this glass blowing, you've got to have the furnaces for it. So we're talking about tons of power. They've come away from gas. I think they've come away from gas. And so it's just going to be energy. And so the energy requirements for this thing are heavy. We're talking about like 450 amp service, I think was one of the conversations we had. But since then, we found that 200 amp services may be sufficient, I believe. But these are the sort of things that we got cut off. I just came back from the acupuncturist. You saw me earlier in the car, and it's really doing awesome for me. Once before I had tried just a few needles, and it didn't work on the specific thing that we were targeting. But this time I went into a different person with a reason, with actually several different questions, and we really melded. Whenever I called her, whenever I met her, and then now whenever I had the appointment. So anyway, what I was saying is that all sorts of projects, you'll learn how each business is different. You'll communicate with your client on what it is that they need, and you'll examine what it is that they already have, if they have anything. Well, just case studies in general. Find them. Make yourself smarter. So I've done residential remodels, and I've designed a duplex, but it hasn't been built yet, so that would be from scratch. And that one, like the first one that I was talking about, where I just needed to get the thing off my desk and propose something and show them that I could do interesting work. Both of these projects are out in the countryside, so you have different codes out in the country as opposed to what you have inside the city, municipality, city lines. So that's something interesting to know about. And it's important to have a relationship with contractors so that they can understand how you work, and so that y'all can all be on the same page. Because if you think about it, you're creating art and a plan for a piece of art to be constructed, and they're the people who are actually putting it together on a totally different timeline. So I haven't done any industrial or hazardous. I haven't done any institutional. I haven't done education. I have done a music studio. That was pretty interesting. Those people knew what they wanted, how they wanted to divide the space. All I could do was show them what things were going to look like prior to it all happening. It was kind of a elongated space, so we had a just wide enough hallway going all the way back to the back rooms, but left and right on this hallway were a bunch of classrooms, and then in the front there was a foyer. It was also in that low priority structure that I talked about, the pizzeria going into. And then just recently, because I've had so much work on that same site, I was asked to push some paperwork through the city in that historic committee that I was talking about for some awnings for that same piece of property. And then also down on the corner of that piece of property, a guy wants to put a Cambodian fused menu restaurant, bistro. And so he, from the building owner, already had some floor plans to go, but those floor plans didn't show everything, and the city's asking for more information, and so I was asked then to do some of the remaining drawings that were needed. And that's kind of a situation where it's like, well, I didn't do the initial things, so you know, good luck to you, because you're cutting my prices, you know, quite a bit. I want the whole project, not just a portion of it. But it's okay, because work is work. New relationships, well, work is getting busy and learning. New relationships are new relationships. You don't know where they're going to go. And then on top of that, I've already got the whole thing in my computer because of all my other studies on the same property. So why not just go ahead and say, okay, here's some fruit from the same tree. Right now, I personally am in the process of demoing my own project, which I'm actually not sure what it's going to be. Is it going to be my office and living area, or is it going to be a small restaurant? Because I've observed all these other bistros and restaurants, because I know how to maneuver through things, and I've done a bit of thinking about how much I'm able to charge and how cumbersome this is for me to create these things, to do this stuff for people. Maybe I want to invest myself in real estate, or yeah, real estate, my architecture, my own architecture. Some people start out that way. There's a guy down the street over here, he did something with a lot that no one else could figure out what to do with. He built a two-story house with a courtyard in the back, where that's basically the garage, because they drive around it to sit their cars back in that courtyard. And all the rooms are really small, and therefore they have tons of windows. And basically, I think the guy's just gonna stay there for a little while, and then he's gonna sell it. I think he's waiting this certain time period of, will the bank allow me to sell this house? Will taxes come raining down on me if I sell it too soon? Through working on these types of projects, you'll learn what it is that people are doing in your in and around your profession. You'll figure out what's up with that contractor. You'll figure out what that investor wants to do. You'll figure out what the realtor wants. A realtor wants to flip houses or businesses. The realtor wants people moving. And you'll also figure out how business owners operate. And some of them pay you real fast, and some of them promise you stuff and don't quite deliver. You could have used that small amount of money a long time ago. Like, why are we even talking about this? Residential remodels, you know, figuring out what people can do with their house, always bringing a consulting, fresh mind with ideas, fresh ideas. Older folks are going to look at you and they're going to say, huh, you're a young person. I bet you have some new, fresh ideas to zest up, you know, our situation. In that case, you're pretty dang lucky. They're interested in what it is that you have to offer. In other ways, you might have to show up on the scene and prove yourself. I just ate underneath this tree. A little bit of a sandwich. I really don't eat sandwiches often. Instead, I get even more pure than that. But we'll get into that in a different video. So, my residential remodels and my business remodels, construction, I counted up. I have done 6 residences and 16 businesses. What did I not already say? So there was a while back that I did a business remodel where this person went in as the first tenant of this space that's in front of an apartment complex. And this little tiny building used to serve as the office for a motel that sat on the same piece of property. Well, they developed this piece of property and demolished all the little motel rooms, but they kept the office, which was pretty interesting. Excuse me. Which is pretty interesting because it's got one of these live oak trees straight through the roof, and they don't have a weather problem. They don't have it leaking in the roof. So initially this guy goes in there and I guess it was the developer that set him up with everything that he needed, and his business was a fresh food market, and then it kind of like pivoted into, oh well, let's make it a bar because we're not selling fresh food to anybody, and yeah, I'm not going to go any further into that. If you can't sell produce goes bad. So you have to have so much business to hold produce. Okay, now I'm done with it. So he had that, and then they had to quit. They go out of business. I did not help them. The next person comes in. I have good relations with certain people. They talk about me. They call me up. We meet the day after Christmas one time, and we talk about what they're willing to do with the kitchen, and or make this back room a kitchen. Oh wait, there was somebody in between that also went out of business. Yeah, there was an oyster bar that went in there afterwards, and then came my clients, the wine bar. They didn't have too many ideas, but they had a bunch of materials from their old wine bar in the next town, and these guys were business partners. One of them owned that wine bar in the other town, and so they wanted to set up here. And so I advised them on. I just got interrupted from a phone call, and it was likely a scam. That's so stupid. Why do you interrupt me? I'm doing a video. Why do you do that, Apple? So these guys say that they might want to keep the bar in the same spot that this other guy had a bar, that these other guys had a bar. And I was like, no, don't put it there. Feng shui of the place, it doesn't make sense. It's too far deep into the space, and it's basically like any clientele that walk up to it are almost behind the bar already. So I tell them, put the bar in this other spot, and maybe make it like this, and open up these walls, you know, peel back this stuff, you know, let's figure out how much inside this wall needs to be structural and kept, and the rest of it should go, because we gotta open this up. We gotta make it a nice living room, dining room sort of, and really allow that natural light to come in. Like I said, they have the potential of a lot of nature coming in. And then another way that I saved them money was, we went into the kitchen area because it was an oyster bar. They had quite a few workings back there, and there was this huge vent hood in the kitchen, and they were like planning to tear it out because they didn't need it. And I was just like, why don't you just keep it? What harm is it gonna do? Just keep it there. Don't use it because you don't need it. So I saved them some money there, and it was probably, you know, the expense that they paid me altogether, to tell you the truth. And then another, come on, it's right there on the tip of my. So I once helped out this this bistro cafe make a breakfast bar in the back where they can make omelets. I suppose they could make, you know, pancakes and all sorts of things, but they wanted to make omelets in their back area. So I made it to where it was all code safe. We had steps behind the countertop where only employees go, and we figured out basically they needed me to have an understanding of how everything was going to be put together, and to make sure that everything was planned for, that had its spot. So it was pretty comprehensive. They just had a bunch of stuff that they needed to fit underneath the square footage of the balcony above them. So they were just having it to where the structure poles that came down for the balcony above them, everything was going to fit within there. Plus the door out of the kitchen into this area. And then we planned for a garage door to come down and close off the area, and then also the same thing with like glazed garage doors come down on top of the countertops. So that was pretty fun. I spend some of my time brainstorming and sketching, drawing things that exist around us. Of course, projects that I'd like to pull off with my own cash. But sometimes I do work for friends and I gift it to them for free and just say, you know, if you work on this, if you do this, then, you know, I want payment. I want to go forward with this project with you, but here's my initial blah. And that, a lot of times you don't get any work out of that, but it gives you experience in working with other people, and it gets those people off your back, you know, like these people who constantly talk about doing something but don't ever do anything. It's kind of fun to give them plans and just make it to where they just zip up. It's pretty funny. Like, some people owe me some money, but they don't, because I just said, you know, whatever, just take it. If you don't do this, you don't owe me any money. But if you do it, then I need to be a little bit involved in order for you to even get a construction permit. Or of course you can just take my designs and go somewhere else and pay out your butt, because it's gonna be a lot of money. Why, fly? Why? Why do you come straight for me? There's a few nests up in the trees. Now that I'm recalling it, there's quite a few people that I've done some very cheap amounts, some very small amounts of work that I could have charged much more for, but these people weren't serious in the first place. They just wanted to get something down on paper to make them feel like they were, you know, progressing. But this is literally how you're going to start out. This is, unless you're lucky, literally how you're going to start out is word of mouth conversations, and then finally someone runs something by you and says, do you think that you could do this? Do you think that you could help us out with this? About how much do you think this would cost me? Often people will have a piece of property and they're not the people who actually acquired it. Instead, it's been passed down in their family, and they're the person who ends up with it, so they don't have heavy thoughts on doing something with it. And then also, if you're lucky, you'll have people who are doing things, and they'll contact you and want to brainstorm with you on the piece of property, on what it could be. And then you could also, if it's a commercial space in the city, or I guess if it's residential as well, you could give them a quick rendering of what it is that you're thinking. And don't go too far into it, but to give them an idea so that they can, to give the next party an idea so they can convey it to them. So say you need to convey this to a builder, are you capable of doing things like this? Say you need to convey it to the city, hey city, you know, like, maybe you require so many parking spaces, but can I get away with, or maybe you have development plans for this piece of property to stay as a certain zoning code. Can you change it for something like this? You know, like, maybe you'll be contacted for like pretty images to motivate, to persuade, to influence. I remember the forgotten one now. It was a daycare. So a friend of mine, or an acquaintance of mine from school, grade school, she contacted me up and said that she's transforming a piece of property that actually another friend's parents or acquaintance's parents owned. She was transferring, or she wanted to see if it was capable, because she's already looked at, I think, 43 properties in the last month and a half, trying to turn the things into daycares. But whenever you set up a daycare, there's so many things involved. You have to have a covered play area for them of a certain square footage. You have to have so many exits and the high-tech stuff to these exits. You have to have so many different types of rooms and the square footage in each of those rooms. To give you an idea, like, parents had to have, like, on their cell phone, they would interact with the front door in order to get in. It was pretty interesting. So actually, after they were open, it was kind of hard to get in the place. The right person had to be at the door. So that was a pretty interesting gig, because we ripped away the walls in a lot of the office areas to make it to where the square footage in a single room was maximized for each of the different levels of kids. So you've got pre-K, you've got toddler, infant, you've got another one in there, I think, and then the kitchen. Oh, and then there's after school program also that stays separate from like the infants and things like that. But this kitchen, we fit it in a pretty interesting way. Basically what I did at this time, this was one of my first projects to go only from SketchUp. SketchUp Pro and on into Layout. Layout is the sister program for SketchUp that lays out things in your paper space. Paper space would be the terminology that you would use in AutoCAD. FYI, I haven't done Revit since I had to learn it in college for Condocs, and then easily gave that up. It was so silly, like Revit would make you freeze. Okay, Fly, I get it, thank you. But I still gotta tell you.